There is a certain kind of woman who walks into a room and does not try to be seen. She does not scan the crowd for recognition. She does not perform softness or strength. She does not stretch herself to be more than she is in that moment. And yet somehow she holds your gaze longer than anyone else. Her presence hums at a different frequency, one that is not broadcast for applause but still manages to command attention. Not because she is loud, but because she is deeply self-contained. Her silence speaks louder than most voices ever could. She is the kind of woman who knows her worth, not from affirmation, but from an internal excavation that took years. She has sat with her own shadows until they softened, has walked herself through heartbreak without begging to be rescued, has faced the unbearable and still chosen tenderness over bitterness. That kind of inner work leaves a residue. It shows up in her posture, in the way she does not rush her words, in the way she listens like she already knows the answer and is only giving you space to hear it for yourself. People do not always know what to call it. Some call it confidence, others mistake it for arrogance. But it is neither. It is peace, and peace is magnetic in a world that feeds on unrest. She does not chase because she does not have to. Her value is not on the auction block. She is not looking for approval like air. Her sense of self is not for sale, not even for love. That kind of clarity is rare. That kind of rootedness feels almost mythical. You do not forget her because she reminds you of something ancient and true. She mirrors calm, and that poise becomes quietly addictive in a world conditioned to chaos. She doesn't beg for energy, she chooses where hers flows. She does not flood you with information about who she is. She lets the energy speak, and it speaks clearly. I know myself. I do not need to chase what belongs to me. I do not cling to what does not. There is power in that kind of discernment, and that power draws others in, often without them understanding why. She is not performing mystery. She has simply become so acquainted with herself that she no longer feels the need to explain, and in doing so, she creates space for others to meet her without pretense. She is not hard to read because she is hiding. She is hard to read because you have not yet developed the emotional literacy to interpret that kind of self-possession. She is not cold, she is contained. There is a difference. She is not trying to be desirable, she just is. Because desire, true desire, is not about reaching for what is always available. It is about being drawn toward what has depth, what has layers, what requires your presence to be fully seen. That is her energy. Unbothered, unrushed, undeniable. Not because she is trying to prove anything, but because she no longer has anything to prove. And that, in a world of endless noise, is the loudest thing of all. There is something unforgettable about a woman who is no longer chasing anything outside of herself, not validation, not a partner, not even understanding, because she has met the parts within that once screamed to be seen and soothed them into silence with presence instead of panic. Jung's concept of individuation speaks directly to this kind of wholeness, where the feminine does not collapse into others for meaning but returns again and again to the sacred interior where all answers begin. She is not mysterious for the sake of allure. She is mysterious because she has done the work to reconcile her own contradictions and now lives in harmony with them. That kind of integration creates a stillness that does not feel like absence. It feels like depth. It feels like being in the presence of someone who is no longer seduced by performance or controlled by perception. She knows who she is because she has walked through who she is not, and that journey has made her presence magnetic in ways that cannot be faked. Desire, real desire, moves toward her not because she is trying to be chosen, but because she has chosen herself so completely that being in her orbit feels like coming home to something sacred. There is no hunger in her eyes for approval, no edge of desperation in her laughter, no reaching in her gestures. She gives nothing of herself away for the sake of being liked, and yet her energy invites others in more powerfully than any plea for attention ever could. She does not live in reaction, she lives in rhythm. In a world that confuses loudness with power, her restraint becomes its own kind of sovereignty. She does not need to raise her voice to be heard. Her silence carries weight because it has been earned. And when she does speak, it is not to fill a void or prove a point. It is to express something that has already been lived through and made whole. Jung taught that the truly individuated feminine integrates both shadow and light without denying either, and this woman embodies that truth in her very being. She is soft without being collapsed, strong without being armored. She does not explain her boundaries, she embodies them, and in doing so, she becomes the mirror through which others must confront their own fragmentation. That is why she is often misunderstood. That is why people project onto her their unhealed parts, but she does not flinch, she does not argue. She simply remains, because she knows that wholeness does not need to be defended, it just is, and that being seen is not the same as being validated. Her worth is not a question up for debate, it is a settled truth, and in that truth she becomes the kind of woman who is not easily forgotten. Not because she demands attention, but because she has become the embodiment of what so many are starving for but do not know how to name: presence, peace, integration. She does not try to impress, she impresses by simply being, and in a world that rewards chasing and penalizes stillness, her very existence becomes a quiet rebellion, a gravitational pull, a lesson in what happens when a woman stops asking for permission to be whole. She is not idle, and she is not longing. She is becoming. Every day she chooses herself over waiting, and that is the quiet revolution that shifts the energy around her. There is a myth that a woman who does not chase is frozen in stillness, that she is simply biding her time for someone to arrive and complete her. But that myth was written by those who have never witnessed the force of a woman who is in full devotion to her own becoming. She does not sit by the door of her life hoping someone will knock. She is inside building a sanctuary from the inside out. She is painting the walls with her peace, filling the air with her laughter, setting a table for one that never feels empty. Her joy is not borrowed from compliments or calendar invitations or the promise of being chosen someday. Her joy is rooted in the fact that she chose herself already, that she is becoming someone she wants to come home to, and that becoming never stops. She learns, she sheds, she stretches, she rests, she reclaims. Her life is not a waiting room, it is a field in bloom. The kind of bloom that does not ask to be picked. It is simply there, rooted and radiant. She is not performing independence, she is living it. Her days are full not because she is trying to appear desirable, but because she has remembered how to be in relationship with her own aliveness. That fullness has weight, that fullness has gravity, and people feel it. They may not know why they think of her long after she leaves a room, but it is that fullness that lingers. It is the way she carries her own energy like a sacred flame instead of scattering it in search of someone else's light. She is becoming, and in that becoming, she is also teaching. Teaching that desire does not require depletion, that love does not require pursuit, that intimacy begins within and expands outward, not the other way around. Her presence says, I am not waiting and I am not empty. I am here, I am whole, I am unfolding. And if someone comes, they will meet me in motion. They will not be her rescue. They will be a witness to the life she is already living. That energy changes the room, it quiets the noise, it reveals the hunger in others who have forgotten how to fill their own cup, and it becomes irresistible because nothing is more captivating than someone who is not trying to captivate at all. She walks with a calm that does not need to be seen to be real. She moves without asking permission. She creates because it is in her nature, not because she is trying to be noticed, and when people do notice, they feel something they cannot quite name: a peace, a power, a presence that does not demand anything but invites everything. That is the essence of a woman who is becoming, not because she lacks, but because she listens to herself, to the rhythm of her life, to the truth that she is not a question waiting to be answered. She is a story being written in her own ink, and that kind of self-authorship is unforgettable. That kind of woman is not waiting, she is becoming, and that becoming is the very thing that makes others want to stay. She knows her frequency and she does not dilute it to match the noise of the room. She understands that energy precedes words and that presence speaks long before introductions are made. She does not grasp for reassurance because her worth is no longer hinged on how well others receive her. That knowing is quiet but unmistakable. It hums beneath her every step. When she walks into a space, she is not checking to see who notices her. She is already grounded in the truth of what she carries. Her self-awareness is not inflated. It is earned, forged through seasons of silence, through decisions made in the absence of applause, through boundaries honored when no one was watching. She does not need to perform clarity because she has lived the questions long enough to embody the answers, and that embodiment radiates in ways the eye cannot fully trace. People feel it in her restraint, in the way she does not rush to fill silence with credentials or accomplishments, in the way she can listen without needing to insert her value into every space, in the way she does not grasp for closeness, but instead allows resonance to reveal what is meant to stay. That kind of woman becomes magnetic not because she is trying to attract, but because she refuses to abandon herself in the process. She knows her frequency is not for everyone, and she does not internalize dissonance as failure. She does not beg to be tuned into. She stays in alignment, and in doing so she becomes a tuning fork for others to meet themselves more honestly. Her certainty is a mirror. It reflects not arrogance but coherence, and that coherence unsettles those who have never met someone unwilling to bargain with their essence. She is not hardened, she is clear, she is not unkind, she is unwavering. Her no is just as sacred as her yes because both are spoken from the same root of integrity. People may not understand her calm, but they remember it. They remember how safe they felt in her presence, how seen, how awakened, not because she tried to fix or convince or rescue, but because she remained steady, sure, soft but unshakable. That is the frequency of someone who no longer waits to be validated before standing in her fullness. She has learned that giving from lack only creates more emptiness, and so she pours from depth instead. She offers what is real, nothing curated, nothing rehearsed, only the kind of honesty that comes from having faced herself and chosen to stay. That frequency cannot be mimicked. It is not a tactic. It is not a role. It is a result. A byproduct of having grieved the masks she once wore, a result of having outgrown the need to be liked in exchange for being true, and in that truth she becomes the rarest kind of presence, one that does not chase and yet is deeply desired, one that does not ask and yet is always remembered, because when a woman knows her frequency, she does not waver, she does not beg, she does not shrink, she becomes a lighthouse, not to save, but to remind, to reflect, to return. And that is a power that does not need to speak loudly to be heard. It simply resonates. She does not need to raise her voice to be heard. There is something in the way she speaks that makes others quiet their own noise. She does not chase understanding, and she does not barter for belonging. Her words are carefully chosen not to impress but to express truth. She does not interrupt. She does not overshare. She does not pepper her sentences with disclaimers to cushion their impact. She trusts silence as much as speech. When she speaks, it is not to fill space, but to clarify it. Her sentences land like clean lines drawn in sand, firm but gentle, leaving no residue of confusion or performative softness. She does not explain herself twice, and she does not lace her opinions in apologies. Her tone is not confrontational, but it is unwavering. There is no urgency in her voice, no scramble to convince, no desperation to be perceived as good. She speaks like someone who has already made peace with being misunderstood, and in that peace she has found her power. Her communication feels slow, but it is not hesitant. It is intentional. Her pauses are not gaps, but grounding. Her language is not embellished, but elemental. She does not perform intimacy through volume or verbosity. Instead, she listens, deeply, fully, with her whole body. She takes in what is not said as much as what is, and that kind of listening teaches others to pay attention too. Her presence asks people to rise without demanding it. When she does speak, even briefly, the room adjusts. People lean in, not because she is loud, but because she is rare. Her honesty is not wrapped in sugar, and her silence is not a punishment. She speaks from clarity, not mood, from depth, not defensiveness. And when she names something, it stays named. There is no backpedaling, no rebranding of truth to appease the discomfort of others. She is fluent in restraint and unbothered by the modern addiction to over-explanation. Her boundaries are clear without being cruel, and her agreements are sacred without needing ceremony. In her quiet presence, others feel compelled to meet her at the level she speaks from. She does not dumb herself down to protect egos, and she does not inflate herself to earn rooms she already belongs in. Her words carry weight because they are not spent cheaply. She is not afraid to hold silence where others fill it with noise. She is not afraid to let her gaze speak before her mouth moves. Her tone is not icy, it is composed. That composure cuts through chaos like a signal in static. People remember what she says because it was never cluttered, because it was never coated in flattery or laced with hidden agendas. Her words are simple, but they are never small. They are anchored in self-respect. And that anchoring gives her language an energy that lingers long after the conversation ends. She does not use words to be remembered. She uses them to be real, and in a world drowning in noise and novelty, that kind of truth becomes unforgettable. She does not chase attention with anecdotes or armor herself in charm. She mirrors calm, and that poise becomes quietly addictive in a world conditioned to chaos. Her speech is not a performance, it is a reflection, and when you hear her speak, you feel not just her clarity, but your own. You remember that language, when used with integrity, does not need volume to matter. It just needs to be honest, and that honesty, held with grace, becomes a frequency you crave without even knowing why. She does not mold herself to be digestible. She does not edit her presence to make others comfortable. She has stopped auditioning for belonging in rooms that ask her to shrink first. Her power begins where her performance ends. There is no costume in her confidence, no mask in her smile, no script in her silence. She is not rude, but she is real, and that reality is startling in a world so trained to reward the palatable over the powerful. She does not contort her values to earn temporary acceptance. She does not betray her truth to avoid awkwardness. She is at peace with not being everyone's favorite. Her value is not measured in applause, it is measured in alignment. She chooses resonance over reach, depth over decorum. She has grieved the cost of approval and decided her soul was too expensive a currency to trade for it. She is no longer flattered by being tolerated, no longer moved by being seen if she must dim her spirit to stay visible. She has stopped chasing invitations to tables where she must hide her hunger. She would rather eat alone than perform hunger she does not feel. Her self-worth is not negotiated in other people's comfort zones. She does not smile when she wants to speak. She does not laugh when she means to leave. She does not stay still when her spirit says, move. There is a quiet fire in her honesty, a strange beauty in her refusal to contort. She knows that performance invites clapping, but truth invites connection. So she has traded charm for clarity. She is not here to be cast in someone else's play. She is not a role. She is not a script. She is not a mask held in place by fear. She is not a projection made from politeness. She is presence, raw and unrepeatable. Her relationships do not rest on fragile eggshells. They breathe in her wholeness. She lets people decide who they are in the face of her truth. She lets them walk away if her authenticity is too loud for their comfort. She no longer edits her soul to fit into narratives that require her to disappear to be loved. She is allergic to inauthenticity, even in its most glittering forms. She does not wear kindness like a costume. Her kindness has depth, it has boundaries, it has discernment. She is not interested in pleasing people who only love the version of her they can control. She knows the difference between acceptance and performance, between intimacy and appeasement, between being liked and being loved. She has stopped mistaking the applause of the many for the loyalty of the few. Her circle may be smaller, but it is sacred. Her interactions may be quieter, but they are real. She does not chase chemistry if it costs her clarity. She does not chase validation if it requires self-abandonment. She does not decorate her opinions with softness just to be palatable. She has learned that peace is not found in being liked by everyone. It is found in being fully herself, even when that self makes others uncomfortable. Her presence is not a mirror for others' expectations. It is a window into her own. She lives by her own standards, not someone else's applause. She does not perform love. She becomes it. She does not chase acceptance. She embodies it. She is not here to be liked. She is here to be. And in that being, fully formed and unfiltered, she mirrors calm. That poise becomes quietly addictive in a world conditioned to chaos. She does not leave with noise. She does not leave with threats or theatrics or explanations soaked in desperation. She leaves like the tide, quiet, certain, inevitable. And yet somehow, her absence fills the room more than her presence ever asked to. Those who took her stillness for weakness notice the weight of her silence only after it settles in their bones. There is no begging, no pleading, no frantic reach for closure. She does not try to edit the exit to make it easier for others to swallow. She simply goes, and in her going, she teaches. Her absence does not scream, it haunts. It stays in the corners where she used to laugh. It lingers in the pauses she used to soften. It echoes in the places where her spirit used to hold up the room. She does not slam doors. She does not burn bridges. She lets people keep their dignity, even as they fumble to understand the clean line she drew with hers. There is no blame in her withdrawal, only clarity, only the quiet truth that she will not remain where she is mishandled. Her boundaries are not punishments. They are the final form of her self-respect. Those who once assumed she would always stay begin to feel the space she no longer occupies. They remember her not because she forced herself to be unforgettable, but because she never did. Her lack of performance makes her memory louder. She was never trying to prove her worth, and so when she walks away, people are left trying to prove theirs. Her presence was never about control. It was never about possession. It was about choice. And when she stops choosing you, you feel the full weight of what it meant that she once did. Her goodbye is not a tactic, it is a truth, and because she exits without bitterness, her absence feels even more precise. It is not messy, it is not open-ended, it does not leave space for confusion or games. It is final in a way that makes people rethink how they treated her beginning. Her grace in leaving becomes the most powerful thing about her. It reveals everything her silence had already spoken. She will not chase, she will not cling, she will not collapse in an effort to make herself stayable. She will simply choose to go where her peace is not up for debate, and when she goes, she takes nothing with her. No resentment, no fragments of herself, no unfinished performances, only the fullness of who she is, and the knowing that her departure is not a punishment but a permission slip. For herself, for others, for the next chapter she is ready to walk into. People do not forget her because she made a scene. They remember her because she didn't need to. Her absence teaches what her presence never demanded. It is a mirror, a message, a line in the sand drawn not in anger but in reverence for the self she refuses to betray. Those who thought her silence was emptiness come to learn it was depth. Those who thought her grace was softness come to learn it was steel. Those who thought she would always be there come to learn that wholeness never waits where it is unseen. She leaves like a poem with no final stanza, not because it was incomplete, but because some things are meant to echo longer than they are meant to last. She mirrors calm. That poise becomes quietly addictive in a world conditioned to chaos. She does not scramble for outcomes or chase what flees. Her steps are measured, not because she is slow, but because she is sovereign. Every movement is infused with discernment. She listens before leaping. She watches before weaving herself into anything. Her life is not dictated by someone else's schedule, not steered by the panic of missing out. She is attuned to deeper tides. She knows that pressure often comes dressed as importance when really it is just noise. She knows that urgency, when not rooted in truth, is a thief that steals presence. So she pauses, she breathes, she lets things unfold instead of forcing them open. And that stillness unsettles people, not because it is passive, but because it is powerful. She does not apologize for needing time. She does not perform certainty she does not feel. She does not match the frenzy of those who mistake speed for significance. Instead, she returns to her own rhythm, one that was carved through quiet, through pain, through listening to the parts of herself that are not moved by timelines or loud voices. She has met her own center. She has done the work to trust it. So when others rush her, she smiles softly and holds her ground. When others try to bait her into reacting, she remains still. Not because she is afraid, but because she understands that energy is sacred and must be spent with care. She does not move just to move. She moves when the inner yes rises from a place of clarity, not compulsion, and that makes her rare. People are used to responses on demand. They are used to access without reverence, but she is not accessible in that way. Her presence must be earned, not extracted. Her direction must be aligned, not coerced. She does not say yes just to keep peace or to avoid discomfort. She says yes when peace lives inside the choice. This is not stubbornness, it is alignment. This is not aloofness, it is devotion to what is true. She knows that urgency has a scent. It smells like fear and feels like grasping, so she waits for invitations that carry the fragrance of respect. She has seen what happens when she moves too fast, when she overrides the quiet no in her gut. She has paid for speed with regret, and now she honors the cost of her energy. There is something magnetic about that calm. People feel it when they speak to her. They sense that their chaos cannot penetrate her field, that their confusion will not provoke a performance, that their impatience will not collapse her poise, and so they lean in. They wonder how she does it. They call it mystery, they call it grace. But really it is the fruit of boundaries wrapped in wisdom. It is the result of knowing that what is meant for her will not need to be chased, only chosen. Her stillness is not absence of action. It is the presence of purpose. She moves like the moon, not the wind. She shifts with seasons, not storms. And in a world where people rush to become, she simply allows herself to be. That is why they remember her. That is why they try to match her pace and cannot. She is not swayed by pressure because she is anchored in her own pulse. She does not cling, not because she lacks feeling, but because she holds feeling as something holy. Her love is not thrown like a net to capture, nor wielded like a weapon to manipulate. It is offered with the grace of someone who has learned to keep her soul intact even while giving her heart away. So when she walks away, there is no spectacle, no tantrum, no rage, just silence that echoes louder than any closing door. She does not fight to be chosen. She does not beg to be kept. She simply withdraws like the tide when the shore proves too careless. And those who lose her do not realize what they had until their world feels quieter without her. Not just in sound, but in presence. She leaves behind an absence that sharpens with time, because what she gave was rare. A presence that listened, not to respond, but to understand. A kind of love that asked for nothing but honesty. A kind of support that did not demand applause. Her love had no strings, only truth. And truth is not something most people are ready for, so when they mishandle her heart, they assume she will return, that she will explain or plead or wait just long enough for their comfort. But she never returns to what dishonors her. Her exit is her answer, and in that finality lies the ache. It dawns slowly, not as panic but as a growing void. They will scroll through memories, messages, moments. They will wonder when exactly she began to pull away, but she will never tell them, because she gave signs. She always does. Quiet ones, gentle ones, but real. And when those signs go unreceived, she folds her wings and vanishes. She does not leave to punish. She leaves because she finally believes herself, and that belief is irreversible. In a world obsessed with winning people over, she is the reminder that not all things are fixable. Some losses must be lived with. Some lessons only come after the door has closed. They may find other lovers. They may move on in logistics, but something in them will always remember how safe it felt when she looked at them like they were made of more than wounds, when she touched them like they were whole, even when they were not, when her silence meant sanctuary, not withdrawal. They will try to recreate it, to find another voice that doesn't shout to be heard, another presence that doesn't crowd, but they will only find echoes, because she is not repeatable. She is not a template. She is not a phase. She is an encounter, one that reshapes how someone measures love, one that recalibrates what intimacy should feel like, one that leaves them knowing they once held something sacred and let it slip. And the ones who lose her often realize too late that she was not withholding. She was waiting for them to rise, to meet her where respect lives, to match her depth with courage, but they never did, and now they wake up in places she will never belong, surrounded by noise she would never make. And that contrast stays. It lingers like perfume on an old coat, like a name they cannot forget, like a home they were never quite ready to leave but now can never return to. She does not enter rooms to impress or conquer. She enters to observe, to feel, to understand what is not being said. Her power does not lie in knowing how to control a situation but in knowing how to read it with such clarity that control becomes unnecessary. She does not chase outcomes and she does not force timelines. Instead, she lets people unfold at their own pace. She watches how they handle silence, how they speak of others when they think it doesn't matter, how they respond when no one is watching. This curiosity is not passive, it is potent. It is a soft gaze that pierces deeper than any demand. People mistake her calm for softness until they realize she sees everything and still chooses stillness. That choice makes her unforgettable. She does not project a fantasy and then try to mold someone into it. She does not script conversations in her head or edit her essence for palatability. She allows reality to reveal itself without resistance. This lack of force feels rare. It disarms. People are used to being judged quickly, labeled quickly, pursued or pushed away based on shallow assessments. But she withholds judgment. She simply watches. And that watching makes people feel exposed, not because she is trying to catch them, but because they are not used to being seen without agenda. Her energy is clear water, no ripples from panic, no need to control the temperature, just depth. And in that depth, things surface. Insecurities, truths, desires, fears. She holds space for all of it, but she does not absorb it. She lets people show her who they are, even if who they are changes. She honors the becoming, but she never loses herself in the process. Her presence teaches people about their own need to perform, and when she doesn't join the performance, they are left with their own reflection. That is where the discomfort begins, and the magnetism, because to be witnessed without pressure is to be remembered long after the moment ends. She does not ask for loyalty from strangers. She does not test or trap. She is not a maze built to confuse. She is a mirror. Her curiosity is gentle but exact. She is not interested in controlling people. She is interested in understanding them, and that makes her far more powerful than those who chase validation by molding the world around them. She does not interrupt the unfolding of truth. She waits, she listens, and her silence creates space where the masks fall off. In a world where so many are loud to prove their place, she becomes a refuge, not because she is passive, but because she is rooted, and people remember that. They remember how they did not have to explain themselves. They remember how she never interrupted their truth. They remember that for once they were not being managed or manipulated, they were being seen, and once someone is seen in that way, they crave it again. But not everyone is ready to live without illusion. Not everyone wants to be known without control, so she moves through the world unburdened by attachment to outcome. Her curiosity keeps her free, her neutrality keeps her powerful. She does not need to chase what is meant for her. She simply remains open enough to notice when it arrives, and that noticing is enough. She does not enter rooms scanning for rivals. She does not see other women as threats or believe that her light must dim so another can shine. Her self-worth is not a performance graded by applause or a role earned through comparison. She knows who she is, not because someone told her, but because she spent enough time alone to remember. That inner knowing frees her from the game of chasing approval or wrestling for attention. She does not posture. She does not overcompensate. Her presence speaks for itself, and in a world addicted to proving and performing, that quiet refusal to compete becomes magnetic. She does not try to win anyone over. She is not impressed by scarcity disguised as status. She does not audition for friendships or romance or belonging. She aligns. And if something does not match her peace, her rhythm, her truth, she lets it fall away without fuss. She does not fight to be chosen because she already chose herself. And that choice created a gravity. Not the desperate pull of need, but the anchored strength of someone who no longer abandons herself to be included. That steadiness draws in what is meant for her without force. She is not concerned with who is prettier or more popular or louder. She has no desire to outrun anyone. Her pace is her own. Her voice is her own. Her life is her own. So when she walks into a room, she brings all of herself, not to dominate, but to belong fully to her moment. That wholeness is what others feel. It disorients those who expect competition, who expect her to shrink or posture or prove. But she will not participate in dynamics that require her to fragment herself. She will not chase roles that cost her her peace. She does not need to win affection. She does not seek validation from people who do not know how to hold it. She simply notices. Does this feel like safety? Does this feel like expansion? If not, she withdraws. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Her exit is clean. Her standards are sacred. And those who try to impress her with flash or fame or shallow promises are often startled when she does not chase, when she does not compete, when she does not grasp. They are left wondering how someone so soft could be so immovable. But they do not understand the depth of her self-regard. They do not understand that a woman who aligns does not negotiate her soul for inclusion. She does not mistake attention for love. She does not confuse proximity with connection. She knows how to be alone without being lonely. She knows how to witness beauty without wanting to possess it. She knows how to walk away without needing to explain. And that kind of quiet confidence creates tension. It reveals the places where others are still trying to be enough. But she is not triggered by someone else's shine. She blesses it. She celebrates it because someone else's radiance does not dim hers. In fact, it reflects it. She does not guard her worth like a weapon. She wears it like breath. Natural, steady, unapologetic. Her lack of competition is not passivity, it is presence, and that presence rewrites every room she enters. She protects her peace like something holy because to her it is. She does not hand out her energy like coupons. She does not let urgency replace intimacy. Her availability is not the currency she uses to feel worthy. Instead, she measures everything by how it feels in her body. Her nervous system is the compass, and when something brings static, she does not ignore it. She listens, she adjusts, she steps back, not out of fear, but out of reverence for what it took to arrive at this steadiness. She will not overextend herself to be liked, and she will not contort to be chosen. Her yes means something because she is not afraid to say no. She is not rude, she is rooted, and that groundedness is what makes her feel like home to others. They may not know why they feel calmer in her presence, but they do, because she is not leaking, she is not performing, she is not waiting to be told who she is. She already knows, and in that knowing, she creates an atmosphere where anxiety cannot thrive. Her tone is even, her pace is slow, her eyes are soft but clear. She does not interrupt, she does not overshare, she does not grasp for closeness. She allows connection to arrive with grace or not at all, and when it doesn't, she lets it pass without bitterness. People come to her with chaos, but they do not leave with it, because she will not absorb what is not hers to carry. Her peace is not an accident. It is the product of deep discernment, of learning when to walk away, of unlearning the urge to fix what is broken in others, of releasing the need to explain why her boundaries are not punishments, but invitations to rise, to respect, to meet her where she is. Not everyone will, and she does not grieve that anymore. She blesses it, because anything that costs her peace is too expensive. She has no appetite for drama, no tolerance for games, no time for roles that ask her to abandon herself. She has chosen to live in a way that feels good on the inside, even if it looks quiet from the outside. And that silence, that stillness, that refusal to be pulled in every direction makes her unforgettable. In a world that moves too fast, she slows down. In conversations that spiral, she grounds. In relationships that try to test her, she exits. Her power is not in her volume, it is in her stillness. It is in the way she will sit in silence rather than pretend. It is in the way she will pause before responding. It is in the way she knows that her peace is not negotiable. She does not broadcast her boundaries, she embodies them. And because of that, people treat her differently. Not because she demands it, but because she lives it. Her life is not a reaction, it is a response. A careful, conscious, deliberate response to the truth of who she is. She honors that truth every day with the way she protects her peace. And in doing so, she teaches others that serenity is not soft, it is sovereign. It is not passive, it is protective. It is not distant, it is discerning. Her calm is not a facade, it is a fortress. And those who cannot honor it are not meant to enter. She is not afraid of being passed over. She does not beg to be seen. If someone chooses someone else, she does not shatter. She does not spiral. She simply lets them go with a grace that unnerves. Because she does not source her worth from being chosen. She has chosen herself already, fully, repeatedly, quietly. Her value is not dependent on who stays. It is not validated by who wants her. It is not confirmed by attention, applause, or proximity. She knows that being overlooked does not make her invisible. It makes her free. Her power is not in being everyone's favorite. It is in being deeply herself regardless. That self-possession feels rare in a world that trains women to perform for place. But she performs for no one. She does not shapeshift. She does not dilute. She does not manipulate her own truth in hopes of being accepted. She understands that not being chosen is often a blessing wearing the disguise of rejection, and so she blesses it. She does not take it personally when someone else is preferred. She knows it is not a reflection of her lack, but of their lens. She knows some people cannot see clearly, and she will not dim herself to fit into their blurry vision. She lets people go without punishment, without bitterness, without scenes, just a soft exhale and a return to her center. That kind of sovereignty is disorienting to those who expect collapse. And ironically, it often becomes the very reason they return, not because she chased, but because she didn't, because she did not make them the sun, because she did not try to prove her worth through persuasion. She allowed absence to be its own teacher. She understands that what is truly meant cannot be lost through non-chasing, and what is not meant cannot be kept through striving. So she does neither. She releases, she returns to her rhythm, she continues to rise, and people feel that. They feel the steadiness in her, the non-reactivity, the calm refusal to cling, the lack of fear in her goodbye. She does not threaten to leave. She simply does not stay where she is not met. That boundary is not loud loud, it is lived. And in a world where attention often comes from loud exits and louder demands, her quiet detachment cuts deeper. She will not compete for what should recognize her. She will not campaign for what is out of alignment. Her desire is not need. Her openness is not desperation. She loves with clarity, not hooks. And so when she is not chosen, she does not try to twist the story. She does not try to rewrite her lines. She turns the page. She writes a new chapter. She holds her own gaze. Her glow does not flicker when someone looks away, because it was never lit by them in the first place. It came from the fire she built inside, from the nights she stayed alone rather than settle, from the days she chose peace over performance, from the choice she made to make herself her own sanctuary. And so now, she can let others walk away, not because she doesn't care, but because she cares more about not abandoning herself again. That is why her energy lingers. That is why her absence is felt, because she did not chase, she did not beg. She simply blessed and kept glowing. And in that glow there is a kind of freedom that cannot be faked. It mirrors calm. She loves with both feet on the ground and both hands open. She does not vanish into the people she cares for. She does not lose her shape to prove she is worthy of keeping. When she gives, it is from a place of overflow, not emptiness. Her love is not a performance, it is a current. And because it is whole, it does not cling, it does not demand, it does not contort. She can hold someone close without gripping too tightly. She can desire without attaching her worth to the outcome. That is what makes her different. That is what makes her feel like home. Her love does not trap, it liberates. It allows the other to breathe, to unfold, to be witnessed instead of controlled. She does not measure her value by how needed she is. She measures it by how free she remains inside intimacy. And that freedom is rare. Most people have only known love as sacrifice, as disappearing acts, as overgiving laced with resentment. But she offers something else. She offers presence without possession, intimacy without enmeshment. She listens without trying to fix. She supports without seeking credit. She expresses without manipulation. She is not performing for approval or affection. She is not shape-shifting to keep the peace. She is not abandoning herself to avoid abandonment. She has learned how to stay rooted while reaching out, how to remain whole while holding space, how to love without becoming small. And it shows in her boundaries, in her laughter, in the way she does not make other people responsible for her joy. That steadiness is magnetic. It creates trust. It feels like safety, because she is not trying to get anything from you. She is not trying to extract love to heal her wounds. She already did that work. She already met the parts of herself that once screamed for proof. And now she whispers. Now she listens to her own rhythm. And whoever enters her world does so by invitation, not necessity. Her heart is not a void waiting to be filled. It is a temple she tends to with care. That is why her love is so powerful, so healing, so unforgettable, because it does not pull you under, it holds you up. It does not dissolve at the first sign of distance. It remains honest even when things are uncertain. And when it ends, if it ends, she does not leave in pieces. She does not make grief her identity. She blesses what was real. She mourns what was sacred. And then she returns to herself. She does not need closure to find peace. She does not chase explanations to soothe her ego. Her love was already clean, already given in truth. She can let go without collapse because she never left herself to begin with. That is what makes her so rare, so radiant, so remembered. She loves without losing herself. And in a world where love has so often meant self-erasure, her way feels like breath, like calm, like being seen without being devoured. She is not here to be consumed, she is here to connect, and whoever receives that connection feels the difference. They feel the depth without drama, the warmth without weight, the intimacy without invasion, because she knows herself, and she knows that no love worth having requires her to disappear. She does not slam doors, she does not raise her voice, she does not make a scene. When she walks away, it is quiet, it is intentional, it is final. Not because she seeks revenge or craves attention, but because she understands that dignity is not loud. It is the steady decision to stop explaining what should have been evident all along. She does not leave to hurt you, she leaves to return to herself. There is no anger in her retreat, only clarity, and that clarity burns brighter than any outburst ever could. When a woman who does not chase begins to walk away, something shifts. It is not just her absence that lingers, it is the way she takes her warmth with her, her laughter, her softness, her faith in you. She gave you her gentleness and her trust like offerings, not demands, and when you could not hold them, she did not scream. She simply gathered what was hers and placed it back in her own hands. That moment, often missed in real time, is what echoes later, not the silence itself, but the integrity behind it, the absence of begging, the refusal to shrink, the grace in goodbye. She does not leave hoping you will follow. She leaves because she knows the difference between holding space and holding on. Her leaving is not a game, it is not a tactic, it is not manipulation disguised as poise, it is a boundary in motion. And the ones who took her presence for granted rarely realize it until the light is gone, until the phone no longer lights up, until her name is no longer on the guest list, until her energy is no longer available for rehearsal dinners or late-night calls or half-hearted apologies. They realize it when they find themselves checking a door that is now locked, not with spite, but with self-respect, because the woman who once showed up for everything with full heart and open arms now shows up only for what shows up for her. She no longer performs availability for those who confuse access with appreciation, and that shift can feel like a severing, but it is not a punishment, it is a return to a self who no longer negotiates her worth, who no longer offers clarity to confusion, who no longer tries to be understood in places that have never made space for understanding. That is why she is unforgettable, not because she was dramatic or loud or hard to hold, but because she was soft in a world that did not know how to receive softness, because she was clear in places that thrived on confusion, because she walked in with her heart open and walked out with her soul intact. The ones who watched her leave often tell themselves they didn't lose anything, until they try to recreate the feeling and find only noise, until they meet people who chase and perform and still do not compare. Because what made her magnetic was not her presence alone, but the self-respect that lit every room she entered. She gave without needing, she stayed without clinging, she loved without losing herself. And when it was time to leave, she did not ask permission, she did not wait for closure, she did not rehearse a speech, she let her absence become her answer. And that is what lingers, not the perfume, not the memory, but the echo of a woman who loved well and left better, a woman who will never again settle for anything less than mutual, holy, wholehearted yes.